participation in this short series. I would like to remind you that the next one is also the final one, and will be on February the 25th, that's in a fortnight's time. And we'll have Jeff Kipnis, who is an architect and used to teach at the AA for many years, and Tobias Rehberger, an artist who was one of the winners of the Venice Biennale 2 years ago. But today, do I need that? Okay. Is that better? Yes. Today it is my pleasure to introduce Hito Steyerl. I think most of you will know something of her and her work. Recently, the Chisenhale had on show various videos of hers, and of course she is prolific at giving lectures, interviews, and above all, writing about her ideas about art. Not only did she show at the Chisenhale, she was also in Edinburgh and Bristol, and now she's back giving more talks. Her videos include November, Lovely Aundrea, War According to eBay, and After the Crash. There are many others. She is shown in the Berlin Biennale, Manifesta, Documenta 12, the Shanghai Biennale, and the list could go on. Since Hito is an extremely articulate theoretician, as well as being a very fine artist, I will only say that she interrogates and intervenes in how we think of and experience images. I leave it to her to show you how she does this. Please welcome Hito.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks so much for having me, and thank you to everybody for being here tonight. I've seen the scenes from the Tahrir Square, and I hope we can all get to watch the party later on TV together. Tonight I'm going to show you many clips from video works I did, and just maybe briefly outline a few of the ideas which have been informing my video work for a while now. And these are mainly just three basic ideas. The notion of traveling images, the image as a mobile entity in the context of digital technology and globalization. Images as things. That's also an interesting question, because we tend to think of the digital image as something which is mainly immaterial, which doesn't have a body. I think that the contrary is actually the case, and that the digital image is something which requires an enormous infrastructure, and the materiality of which is hardly ever thought through. It requires, servers, hard disks, carrier mediums, articulations of technology, of people, of subjectivities, of software. All of these things which are hardly ever taken into account when we think about the digital image which we consider to be some sort of platonic entity without the body and matter. And lastly, some of my work also revolves around the relation of abstraction and the documentary, two terms which are thought to be set in an opposition to each other or unrelated, but which I think share or have a very intimate relation to each other, especially at the moment when we are being bombarded with news images which are in essence very abstract, because they are so pixelated that we hardly recognize anything. And these are the most urgent, the most newsworthy, the most intense documentary images we see. And yet I have the feeling that very often they look much more like paintings, abstract impressionist paintings, than any sort of realist representation. Let me start my presentation by introducing a clip from a video work I made in 2004, and the work is called November. and it tries to juxtapose two very different types of imagery. The first image, or the first type of images, actually derives from the first Super 8 film I ever made. I was 17 years old, and I made it with a group of other girls, and it was a feminist martial arts film shot in Super 8. We were the main protagonists as well, in the absence of, competent actors. And there is no story to this film. There were scenes showing a gang of 3 girls walking around and trying to intimidate and physically attack as many males as possible. That was all it was about. Was never completed, remained a series of militant fragments, and these fragments turned into very a very complicated sort of document 15 years later, when the main protagonist of that Super 8 film was shot in Kurdistan, in eastern Turkey. She had gone underground. She had joined the women's army of the so-called PKK, or the Kurdish Workers' Party. Her unit had been trapped in a firefight. This was in 1998. And most of the other members of her unit had been killed already because they had been attacked by helicopters. Apparently, according to the accounts of some ear witness, she was taken prisoner alive and then executed afterwards. And after her death, this kind of posters started emerging on the streets of Western Europe, which showed her as a martyr. And obviously this was a completely different type of imagery. And the video, November, mainly tries to juxtapose these very different types of imagery. The Super 8 film footage, which was informed by martial arts films and, C-grade or even Z-grade movies, exploitation films, and then this very different type of imagery, but it tries to think about a possible proximity also between both types of imagery, which are linked by the figure of the female heroine, which is armed. I'm going to show you, hopefully. It's on the QuickTime player. The first few minutes of the video.
My best friend when I was 17 was a girl called Aundrea. In 1998, she was shot as a Kurdish terrorist.
If you want while living fast, and if you want to end up giving your all, let me call. Pussycat is living reckless, Pussycat is riding high. If you think that you can
This is my first film.
just you try. It's that she does.
This is me.
What's wrong from right? She's running.
This is Aundrea.
fast and free, child of the night. In her life,
It's impossible to reconstruct the story of the film.
never take her, make up your mind.
Only the fighting scenes were shot, showing a gang of 3 girls trying to clumsily beat up every male they can get their hands on.
Well, just you try. Yeah, just you
The film is silent because the only spools we could steal had no sound. And Aundrea was its charismatic, strong and beautiful center. The last time I have seen Aundrea was 2 years before she went underground, 5 years before she was executed in Kurdistan.
They took her prisoner. One could hear a voice. The voice of Comrade Ronai was full of fear. She screamed. First her voice fell silent, then the one of Comrade Diab. Then Comrade Ronai was killed.
There are strange coincidences with the material we shot almost 15 years earlier, back in Bavaria, where we grew up. In the film, we are constantly fighting, probably for justice, and the ethic code of the film is that only villains use weapons, and the good guys and girls use their bare hands for fighting. Only in this film it is I who gets shot, and Aundrea survives. She picks up the weapon, executes the villain, and rides off into the sunset on a motorbike. Her body never came back. What came back instead was this poster. It says, Martaya Ronahi, taken prisoner by Turkish security forces as a fighter in the Free Women's Army Kurdistan and murdered. The fallen revolutionaries are immortal. I found this poster in a cinema, hanging next to the posters of sex films, just like another pin-up. As a revolutionary means, pin-ups are nothing new. Technically reproduced pictures travel around the world and spread heroic postures.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to violence, the word and the act. Violence devours all it touches, its voracious appetite rarely fulfilled. Yet violence doesn't only destroy, it creates and molds as well. Let's examine closely then this dangerously evil creation, this new breed, encased and contained within the supple skin of woman.
You're gonna still drive away, Buster!
When we were shooting this film, women had to look good and keep quiet. Female role models were rare. We picked them up at the movies, for example in this incredibly tacky film. It deals with a bunch of large-breasted women terrorizing males. We copied those postures, creating pin-ups which hovered between pornography and severe dilettantism. This will give you an impression of how this film is constructed. And I don't know, do you know this film by Russ Meyer? I was very sad to read on my way to London the obituary to Rasatana, the main actress in this film, just died a few days ago. And, okay. So this film actually has a sequel which presents another aspect of this figure called Aundrea, because actually November is not about the real Aundrea Wolf. It doesn't try to create a portrait of her. It doesn't talk about her biography. It talks about her traveling images.
And I remembered, or I realized that actually there was another version of her picture, which was in fact much more problematic, or even more problematic than the ones I had already dealt with. And I knew that somewhere there had to be a picture of myself in a very embarrassing situation, namely naked in Japanese rope bondage under the name of Aundrea Wolf. How come? When I was a film student in Japan in late 80s, I was a documentary film student. I was very ambitious, and I wanted to do some sort of investigative reportage about the Japanese porn industry, which at that time was a very dangerous and messy business. I think it still is, actually. Very much dominated by the mafia, but also a huge business. So I tried to, or I did actually start to work in that industry more or less undercover, but then very, very quickly, actually after one single shooting, I realized that it would be much too dangerous for me to keep doing that, and I immediately ran away. I got scared. But I knew that, and I had chosen an alias or a different name to do this kind of work, because I knew that it wouldn't, I shouldn't be doing it under my own name, and for a reason which is completely unclear to me, I chose to work under the name of Aundrea Wolf, who at that time was absolutely alive and hadn't gone underground at all, so I really don't know why I chose her name. So I decided to go look for this picture, which would present yet another version, you know, of these mythical representations of Aundrea. And I did so being very sure that I'd never managed to find the picture, because otherwise I wouldn't have gone to look for it in the first place. Everybody told me it would be completely impossible, because every year there are billions of this kind of images being produced, and I didn't know anything about who made it. I didn't know the name of the photographer, the publishing house, the magazine. I had forgotten everything. So my idea was actually to stage the search and not to find the picture, and to talk about this industry while looking for the missing picture. But the thing that happened is that 48 hours after I had arrived in Tokyo, I had found the picture. I was very embarrassed, actually, but I couldn't help it. So this video called Lovely Aundrea is about looking for the picture.
その時のことを探しに来た。その時にお仕事されてたんですか？ああ、そうなんですか。どの辺で？出版社とかの名前はわかります？カメラマンとか。全然。87年。
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
頃はね、だってね、本当に制約が多い時代だったね。
もうちょっとお尻突き出してみて。軽くでいいです。はい。
警視庁がエリアになった時が、我々が一番危ない時だっていうこと。今はいいけどね、今はというのは一番うるさい時は、今はいいよ。警視庁が応援というのはやかましい時は実は応援してた時。
制約多ければ多いほどいい気がしますよね。
多ければ多いほどいいんですよ。緩やかになった途端に作る方がダッと堕落したからね。
知恵絞ることがなくなりますね。
そういうことなんだよね。だからね、いいこと言うんだよ。いいこと言ったよ。読者の魅力とは我々の知恵の絞り台なんだよ。魅力っていうのは。
当時ぐらい厳しくされてるつもりでやればいいんですかね。
現実に厳しくないからさ。それがそうはいかない。
彼女ドイツからいらっしゃるドキュメンタリー映画を撮ってらっしゃるひとみさんという方なんですけれども、ですね、彼女が1987年に、日本で映画の勉強をされている時に東京で金箔モデルをされたことがあるんです。でその写真を、探す目的でいらしたんですけど、
誰だったのカメラマン。
それがわからないんだそうです。
事務所はどこの事務所で？
わからないんだそうです。
それは何？写真、スチール写真？ビデオ？
写真。
場所はどこだかわからない？一回だけ？それはわからないな。1987年？
でも飯田先生縛ったんですもんね。
俺そうなの？俺なの？俺？違うよ、俺じゃないよ。でも面白い話だよね。自分の縛られた写真を探してる。でもな、縛られた写真ってのはな、今までに数えたら何万枚どころか何億枚だろうな。欲しかったらここで縛ってあげるから写真撮ってそしたらすぐできる。
新しく作りますか？
そしたらすぐできるよ。
今日作っちゃいますか？
記念に。
それはいいかも。いいかも。
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes a Spider-Man. He's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Hey there. There goes the Spider-Man.
As you have seen, this turned out to be a comedy. And actually, it starts focusing more and more on my assistant director, the young woman you have seen in the film, because she is a bondage model herself, and she has developed that practice into something really, really interesting, which I really became infatuated with, which is something she calls self-suspension, meaning it's not, it's not a bondage practice anymore, in which there is a master on the one hand and a victim on the other hand, but she takes on both of these roles herself. She's suspending herself with a rope from the ceiling and develops this practice into something which is much more connected to floating than to, being a helpless victim bound and tied up in ropes. And this is what the film focuses on. So it becomes much more a portrait of her than anything else. I would like to show you another film or another clip right now. Oh no, that's not the one. Just a moment. Yeah, I only have 4 media players on my computer, so I can't open them all at once. This video seems to be completely unrelated because it's quite much more serious work, but in effect it deals with a very related situation, namely an image which was lost. And in this case, it's a 16mm film which was destroyed during the siege of Sarajevo in 1993. What was this film about? It was a newsreel that was made shortly after World War II. It was actually the first newsreel to ever have been filmed in Bosnia-Herzegovina after World War II. And among other things, it showed a literacy class, a documentary scene of a literacy class. A teacher was teaching rural elderly people how to read and how to write. Now, this newsreel was destroyed during the siege of Sarajevo, and it couldn't be reconstructed. I mean, basically all of the stock of the Sarajevo Film Museum was destroyed because it was hit by grenades twice, and the films that weren't destroyed by the grenades were used for heating during the siege because it was very cold in winter and film stocks burns quite well. But since other film museums kept negatives of most of the film, they could be reconstructed, except for 3 newsreels, which were initially shot on nitro stock, and which for this reason, because nitro stock burns exceptionally well, were kept in a film studio at the edge of town. And the film studio became the front line from the first day, from the beginning of the siege to the last day. It was really a no man's land, and both parties were shooting across it. It was completely destroyed during the war. Now, the video tries to reconstruct this missing newsreel by using a very simple technology. We found 2 witnesses which had seen the newsreel, or which pretended to have seen the newsreel. In fact, it turned out that one of the witnesses had never seen the film in the first place. And they would tell their memories of the film to a drawer who would draw an artist's impression, of the scene of the literacy class. And obviously the reason why I chose this protocol is because usually in order to establish any sort of fact or any objective rendition of an event, you need 2 witnesses. One is not enough. But on the other hand, if you have 2 separate accounts of something, or in this case 2 separate drawings, then at the same moment while you're constructing something like an objective fact, you will also construct 2 differing or 2 different accounts of the story. And the whole video is organized around this structural difference. I will show you the first few minutes of this work.
sad rekonstruirati jednu scenu iz tog filma.
To je mjesečnik broj 1.
Ali baš stvarno nemamo taj žurnal.
Pokušate se sjetiti pa će naš crtač pokušati crtati.
Analfabetski tečaj.
To je bilo opismenjavanje naših starijih žena i muškaraca. Recimo jedna od tih filmskih priča koja je za mene lično bila jako upečatljiva.
Sala je izgledala kao jedna obična učiona, to su bile jedne drvene klupe. U jednoj klupi dvoje je sjedlo, dvoje u redu je sjedlo.
U prednjoj strani se nalazila tabla, veoma sličnog oblika kao ta vaša.
Tabla je bila mobilna, upravo nešto kao ova. I sa druge strane imala ovaj nosač.
Ne, tabla je ovako gore stajala i okolo je imala drveni onaj obrub.
Ne, obična jedna ploča.
U ratnom vihoru 1992. godine filmski materijal na zapaljivoj filmskoj traci na kojoj je sniman, što će reći nitro traci, taj materijal je nažalost bio na prvoj liniji fronta, a tu je bio smješten materijal.
Ovdje je bio filmski studio, montaže,
film studio, ton,
sve tu bio.
Ali svada. I to je šta, odmah pogođeno ili kako?
To je izgorilo.
A šta tu je bio negdje front, kako su nam isto objasnili?
Ova livada je bila razgrančenje. A taj bunker gdje su bili zapaljivi filmi, to je mali bunkerić bio. Ćošku ne vidi se od ovoga drveća. Na onom ćošku je to bilo. Eto, to je bio taj bunker. Ovdje ti trebalo malo svjetla unutra. Evo kuda su ga oni iznijeli, vidiš, otvorili su ovdje. Sve tamo strane, sve to iznijeli.
U ratnom vihoru je također nestala su 3 mjesečnika.
To su Srbi odnijeli, te filmove su uzeli i odvukli.
Smjestili su u neku kuću od porodice Đokić.
Ali nema potrebe, oni su uzeli to i odvukli odmah.
A tu taj materijal je nažalost izgorio.
To su oni odnijeli odmah odvukli za Beograd.
Jer je onda rečeno da su odnijeli tu kuću i odsjećaj i da je tu pogođeno.
Si glupo, znam sam ostavlja tu to. Ovi filmovi su bili, svi bili tu i oni su predra sami, oni su izvučeni. Oni su već pucali kad smo mi izvlačili te filmove.
Jeste bili tu bili?
Bili je ovdje rekvizita, filmska rekvizita, to su bili i stari Mercedesi. Što je vater brani, sad evo recimo se snim, evo i oni su izgorili, evo i vamo. Bilo je 5-6 tih. Ovo je isto bio vojni džip koji je isto rekvizita bio.
Ne u ovome ratu, u onome ratu, u drugom svjetskom, imali smo ratova i ranije. Poslije tog drugog svjetskog rata bilo je mnogo nepismenih u Bosni, pretežno žene.
Djevojaka, starih žena.
Najviše žena.
Žena sa sela, gradskih žena, bilo je oni muslimanki koje su nosile šamiju i kere.
Imala su one šamije na glavi.
Marama koja je ovako zavezana pozadi ili naprijed, kako hoćete.
A znaš šta su šamije?
Jel se vi sjećate toga? Ako ste to vidjeli u nekim starim filmovima.
The interesting experience while shooting this film was obviously that both witnesses were cinema people, and they wouldn't remember anything without referring to other films. So it was always, oh, this was like in this film or like in that film. Their whole memory was completely permeated by the story of, in this case, Bosnian film production. And actually something very similar happened in this film than in the other one. The film started zooming in on the drawer, actually, on the person who drew these artist impressions, because it turned out that he actually had a story to tell which was very relevant to the whole issue. And he drew his own version of a classroom from which he himself had been expelled during the war. I'm going to skip tonight all the works which deal with architecture because I feel too embarrassed in front of this public. Okay. Now, what is this? This refers again to the topic of traveling images, but then again it also touches upon the topic of the relation of abstraction and the documentary. This is a series of 6 light boxes which all show very abstract patterns, like this one, or for example this one. But what are these shapes based on? Actually, these shapes are copyright signs from amateur photographs, mainly from World War II, which are being sold on eBay. The whole work is called The War According to eBay. In recent years, a quite extensive market has developed on eBay to sell amateur photographs of World War II, which mainly German soldiers made during the war on, various war fronts. And the reason why these shapes are being applied to the pictures, there are 2 main reasons why these shapes are being added. One reason is that these are mainly copyright signs, meaning the vendors affirm that these pictures are their private property, and so they cannot be just copied and pasted onto the desktop. That's one of the reasons, and I will show you one original, which is very silly actually. This would be one of the originals taken from a photo album with 24 photos called Die Deutsche Wehrmacht and so on and so on. And here, paradoxically, the face of Adolf Hitler is being censored, even though I don't really know why. This is one of the very few harmless pictures, or of the pictures which show no violent scenes, which are part of this series, because obviously the more graphic and violent pictures are very much in demand on eBay, and they will obviously, this will reflect in the value and in the price of the pictures themselves. The other reason why the shapes are being added to the pictures is basically censorship. Scenes which are too violent or which show insignia which are being prohibited by German law are being hidden or are being blacked out. And so, for example, these are shapes that that I isolated from the photographs themselves. So the photographs have been subtracted. The documentary scene has been subtracted, and only those shapes have been left. But those shapes usually refer to something which is hidden from sight, or which is not supposed to be seen. So it relates to the image content. For me, this is actually a documentary picture, to come back to the relation of documentary and abstraction, but it is a document of the contemporary presence of these pictures. It attests to their contemporary status as digital commodity. So it is not a document of something which really happened in World War II. It is a document of how these scenes are being circulated, also marketed and distributed today. and the form under which they are being viewed. And these are completely dislocated and decontextualized representations. There are hardly any captions, or the captions are very much dramatized in order to raise the value of these pictures. And paradoxically, wherever there is a market, there's also people who try to profit from that market. So there's also there are also many forged albums now online. There are people who will, in fact, produce whole forged albums while adding those copyright signs, and there are even manuals online how to do it. You have to get old GDR film stock, then you have to bake the photos in the oven, and then these albums are completely formulaic. So even I decided, if my career as an artist, fails, I will immediately go into this business, because it's very simple to fake these albums. It's a very formulaic build-up, and you have to add certain captions, and that's it. But this again raises an interesting question, because where is the fake in these albums? Nobody is actually trying to restage any of these scenes. So it's not original prints of the pictures, even though they are being sold as original prints. It's just reproduced or illegitimate copies of the pictures, which are being, let's say, passed off for original ones. But this raises the question: what is the original of a photograph? What is an original photo album? And these questions are not so easy to answer. In case of photographs, it's almost impossible to answer these questions. And most of the pictures, or most of these shapes, actually deal with one situation which relates back to the issues raised in November, because they deal with representations of so-called pistol broads. Now, what is this? This is a sort. This very derogative and awful term referred to female Soviet soldiers which were captured, and just the idea of female soldiers created such a paranoia that actually there are quite disproportionately many pictures of these women which were almost automatically killed. They had no chance to survive, and thus most of these light boxes are devoted to the very abstract representations of these women, and very little is known actually about their fate. There has been very little historical research devoted to them. This is another work which I made in 2007, and which actually on Monday this week became history. Why is that? Because this is a work which consists, as you can see, of 3 vertically arranged computer monitors which show just one color, monochrome color, and nothing happens on these pictures at all. Which color is this? The color is based, on this color scale, which most of you will know probably. It is a color scale introduced by the Homeland Security Office, US Homeland Security Office, after 9/11. And actually on Monday this week, it was abolished because nobody paid attention anymore. I think nobody paid attention from the beginning, but it was introduced with a lot of fanfare. And at the time when I made the work in 2007, actually the highest alert level was valid for almost the whole year. So actually it had become very normal to live with this color. And the idea was in this work, or let's say the template on which I based this work is this very well-known monochrome series by Alexander Rodchenko, which he made in 1921, which shows the three primary colors. It's called pure red color, pure yellow color, and pure blue color. And his idea at that time was that he had reached the end of painting. One couldn't go any further in painting. That was it, you know. This was the absolute end. Of course, as you know, it wasn't exactly the end of the story, but my idea in 2007 was that at this time there was only one primary color, which was the orange or red-orange, indicating the highest risk level. And that this color actually was invisibly permeating our perception at that time and tinging it with an invisible primary color of fear, which would influence everything we saw at that time. There's a comic twist to the reception of that work, because it was shown without any explanation at Documenta, actually, in Kassel, and people didn't really know how to relate to it. So many people tried to peek behind the screens to see whether there was anything, you know, hidden behind the screens, because nothing ever changed. It was just this monochrome color. And this picture was taken by a press photographer, and it became the press photo of the day of the German press agency, and went viral and was distributed all over the world with the caption, "Is there anything behind this?" I was quite embarrassed, I have to say, but then I accepted it. And I found out that many people were actually inspired to take pictures of themselves in front of this work. And they would even, you know, create their own additions to this work as well. And it became a very popular photo opportunity, and the original situation was recreated many, many times. So after a while, I collected all these pictures for about a year, and then I made a short animation film in which all these pictures would start to move. They would be animated. And so I had made none of these pictures. These were, you know, points of view of amateurs, but also of press photographers, but I recombined them into an animation film, which sort of lifted the freeze of the red monochrome. Going to skip all of these. I'm going to show the last work now, or a clip of the last work, which is quite recent. It's not that one. This is actually a work which I really loved making. It's a 30-second film in which all I do is to walk up to that TV and smash it. So the matrix will be revealed. It will create. There will be an abstract pattern created on the screen. But this is not exactly what I wanted to show you. But what I wanted to show you is a clip from this work, which is called In Free Fall, and which is based on a very simple fantasy, which is based on real facts. I saw a picture in the Financial Times of what is called an airplane graveyard in the Mojave Desert in California. And in times of financial crisis, airplanes will be stored in that so-called airplane graveyard, because it's more economical to keep them on the ground than to continue operating them. The older planes will not only be stored, but also dismantled for parts, or even scrapped for metal. And the aluminum would then be shipped off to China. There was a very, very substantial trade going on with second-hand aluminum to China. And because this airplane is so close to Hollywood, there was also another method for recycling those planes, to blow them up for disaster scenes in Hollywood movies. So my fantasy was actually that a plane would be drawn from circulation because of the financial crisis, then it would be blown up for a Hollywood disaster film, then the remaining parts would be collected, shipped to China, where they would be recycled, and then the aluminum would be used to make DVDs, because you need aluminum to create the reflexive layer on DVDs. And then in the last step, the pirated version of the film in which the plane was blown up would be printed on the DVD, and the cycle would start all over again. So I made a series of 3 short films based on that fantasy, and I became actually very much interested in the individual histories of the planes themselves, because planes are used for many different purposes and by many different peoples. And I tried to tell the story of one of these planes by using something which is called the biography of the object, a literary technique developed by Soviet writer Sergei Tretyakov in the late 20s. I will show you a clip of about 10 minutes now. (1929) entwirft der sowjetische Schriftsteller Sergei Tretyakov die Biografie des Objekts. Ein Objekt erzählt uns von den Menschen, die es herstellen und verwenden. Seine Biografie stellt einen Querschnitt der sozialen Verhältnisse dar. Die Biografie des Objekts umfasst auch seine Zerstörung.
מטוס 4X-JYI היה מטוס בואינג 707-700. בסופו של דבר הוא סיים את חייו כשפוצצו אותו עבור צילומי הסרט ספיד. אבל לפני זה הוא טס עבור חיל האוויר הישראלי.
Yeah, the original Speed, we took a 707 and we fixed it up and cut holes in the wings so that when it blew up, it would really blow up. And that airplane had about 10 drums in it filled with gasoline and sand and dynamite. So when it blew a hole right in the top, and then this huge ball of flame came out of that thing.
Jede Biografie hat auch einen Anfang. (1929) beschreibt Tretyakov das Objekt auf dem Fließband. 1929 ist auch das Jahr mit den meisten Flugzeugabstürzen der Geschichte. (1929) stürzen die Kurse an der New Yorker Börse ab. 1929 dreht Howard Hughes auch den Film Hell's Angels, in dem es um Flieger im Ersten Weltkrieg geht. Hughes heuert echte Kampfpiloten an. Aber auch diese weigern sich, eine der Szenen zu fliegen, weil sie für zu gefährlich halten. Hughes fliegt sie selbst und stürzt ab. Er liegt 4 Tage im Koma.
Danach dreht er den Film fertig. Mit diesem Film wurde Howard Hughes als Regisseur bekannt. 10 Jahre später kaufte er die Fluggesellschaft TWA.
I knew of Howard Hughes, and Hughes owned TWA, and when I actually joined TWA, he still owned it.
TWA's the way. Discover the world, the wonderful world of TWA.
חברת Hughes Tool הזמינה במקור את 4XJYI עבור חברת TWA ב-1956. עכשיו, חלק מהמטוסים שהזמין Hughes היו שותפים לאותו הגורל בערך משהו כמו 20 שנה. מתישהו בשנות ה-70 נמכרה חבורה של מטוסי בואינג 707 לישראל. שם הוסטו המטוסים לשימוש של חיל האוויר.
כשמדברים על תקיפה באיראן עולה מיד המחשבה על מטוסי קרב כמו ה-F-15. אבל שום מטוס קרב לא ידע להגיע לאיראן בלי עזרתם של המטוסים האלה, הרעמים, בואינג 707, המילה האחרונה בתעופה האזרחית בשנות ה-60 של המאה הקודמת.
זה המטוס הכי צעיר בליין, בין 36 שנים. ילד. המבוגר בן 50, חגג יובל השנה.
ואין תחושה של קורטאות?
חס וחלילה.
מטוס 4XJYI הוא סט לשימוש כמטוס תובלה, וניתן לו גם שם הכינוי רעם. מטוס אחר מאותה הקבוצה הוסב למרכז בקרה אלקטרוני, וניתן לו שם הבקרה 4XJYD. אותו המטוס גם השתתף במבצע אנטבה ב-1976, שבו מטוס אייר פרנס נחטף על ידי פעילים מיליטנטים גרמנים ופלסטינים עם קשרים לחזות העממית לשחרור פלסטין, או ה-PFLP.
Don't anyone speak! Don't move! This is a live grenade. The pin is out. If anyone tries anything, if anyone touches me, I've only to drop it, and I won't hesitate to do it.
Put your hands on the table, don't move!
נעשו 3 סרטים בעקבות המבצע.
Sit down.
Nobody moves.
You will do exactly what I say.
Okay. Attention, everyone. Attention.
May I have your attention, please?
We represent the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
Of the Che Guevara Force.
Gaza Brigade. We're now in complete control of this flight.
This plane is now under our control.
Is it HD? Ah. Okay.
Attention, please. We've just reached our final destination.
Wie kann eine deutsche Frau in so einem Unternehmen verwickelt sein?
Wir sind Freiheitskämpfer of an international revolutionary movement.
מאחורי החטופה, הדרישה לשחרור כ-53 אסירים מרחבי העולם. הממשלה הישראלית מחליטה לשחרר את החטופים. 2 מטוסי... הממשלה הישראלית a decision is taken who by who? הקבינט הישראלי.
In addition to the 130s, we will fly 2 707s. One of them will be set up for medical services, and the other for communications. Pellet will handle the communications in the 707, which will remain aloft during the operation.
בסופו של דבר המבצע מוכתר כהצלחה, זאת אומרת החטופים כמעט כולם משתחררים. ישנם כ4 חטופים שנהרגים, בנוסף ל-45 חיילים אוגנדים, גם החוטפים, וכמובן יוני נתניהו. אבל מעבר לזה, הצלחה גורפת. I talked about the human casualty and said, but other than that, great success. 4XJYD, שהשתתף במבצע אנטבה, אחר כך משמש לתקופה קצרה בתור Air Force One הישראלי. לאחר מכן הוא יוצא משירות, וכיום הוא נמצא במוזיאון חיל האוויר בחצרים, שם הוא משמש בעצם כסוג של עולם קולנוע.
I was out there and I watched it, and I actually filmed it with my camera. This huge flame, and it was a perfect day for it. I mean, the sky was even bluer than today, and the smoke just went straight up. I mean, it was just unbelievably good.
Can I say our original plane? אוקיי. באותו הזמן המטוס המקורי שלנו, 4XJYI, הוא מצוות לטייסת 120, או בכינוי השני שלה, הטייסת הבינלאומית. אפשר לראות פה את הסמל שלה.
בשנים האחרונות הטייסת הזאת לא מפסיקה להתאמן, לכולם ברור שבעימות מול איראן יהיה למתדלקים תפקיד מרכזי.
יצא לי לראיין את ראש טייסת 120 הנוכחית, והוא לא היה כל כך מוכן לספר לי פרטים על המבצעים, אבל מאחורי השולחן שלו היה שורה של בקבוקי שמפניה, והוא בעצם, הוא כן היה מוכן לספר שהוא קיבל אותם על מבצעים מוצלחים, אבל לא היה מוכן, מסתבר שגם ההקדשות על הבקבוקים היו חסויות. אוף, so cheesy.
May I offer you some champagne?
I have my own label.
All right, I'll get you some glasses right away.
כאן אפילו ההקדשות על בקבוקי הוויסקי והשמפניה מסווגות. ברעיונות של חיל האוויר לתקשורת המילה איראן לא נאמרת, אבל היא מרחפת בחלל האוויר.
ב-1978 נמכר לבסוף 4XJYI חזרה לארצות הברית, ושם הוא מתגלגל ומסיים את חייו במאוחסן בשדה התעופה של מואבי.
What did you do with the rest of the plane afterwards? I mean, there must have been some leftover.
Well, yeah, everything that was left was scrap, and the thing was, that was when the Chinese were buying scrap. So I sold that for a bunch of money because they asked me if I'd get rid of it for them.
1929 behauptet Tretjakow, dass das Leben des Individuums weniger wichtig ist als das Leben des Objekts. Die Materie lebt in verschiedenen Formen weiter. Materie lebt in verschiedenen Formen weiter.
Metallic aluminum is incredibly stable. It's so recyclable. That means it can be melted down and reused again and again. It's so recyclable. Again and again.
Die Materie lebt weiter. Materie kann in verschiedenen Formen weiter existieren. Für Menschen gilt dies nicht. Die Materie lebt weiter.
This is where old planes come to die.
These are all ghosts.
But it's also where they get resurrected into something new.
Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? Would you like to ride in my beautiful balloon? We could float among the stars together.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board. Your safety is our priority. Please follow the safety instructions from your flight attendants carefully. It's too much though, no?
occurred to me that if DVDs can be made from airplanes, then probably airplanes could also be made from recycled DVDs. I think of that every time I'm boarding a plane now. Okay. Well, thanks a lot for your patience, for bearing with me on this historical evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Hito or reflections?
Hi, I saw a few of your interview video clip uploaded on YouTube, and that you mentioned that you want to like differentiate your video work from documentary. That like because documentary also have its own plot from the beginning, and it never can show as it is, and like the truth itself. And I remember you are saying that you trying to be transparent while you're working on some project, and I was wondering what the being a transparent means, like not to be misunderstood by audience in a wrong way that you didn't intend it, or to gain an objectivity, or because I saw your video and there are many footages here to there, and there should be some like cohesive manner to finish your video editing, and yeah, I'm quite confused.
Well, thank you for this question. I mean, I was trained as a documentary film person, and I'm very loyal to this profession. So I do not dismiss the documentary form at all. I just seek to work through its complications, and there are many complications. But maybe one could say that in the last 20 or 30 years, the doubt, or let's say a certain anxiety about the documentary has become pervasive, namely the question whether the documentary really lived up to its promise to, show truth or the things as they really are. Of course, I mean, I think it's become very obvious and evident that this is not the case. On the other hand, I think we've taken our skepticism too far. Because, of course, whatever we're going to see, any sort of documentary narration will always only be a narration. But on the other hand, it also, in my opinion, does manage to capture, some events or some shreds and fragments of reality, whatever that may be. I think it may be quite unexpected, that actually reality shines, through the social construction of the documentary, but it happens. It happens. It's even, in many cases, it's close to being a miracle, but there are cases in which documentary representations do manage to become important, visible evidence. And I think the documentary is set, within this tension of always being only a narration, and then, on the other hand, also being able to unexpectedly capture what Hannah Arendt, for example, calls moments of truth. Yes.
Sorry. A sort of alternation between the material base of the information that you're trying to document and the purely informational reality of it. And it seems parallel with another alternation as between whether it really is real or whether it's in a kind of representational mode. And the two things keep flipping, material base and information as digitalia, as it were, and image versus reality.
Yeah, no, I definitely think this is the case. And for me, the most striking aspect of documentary representation is the fact that, in a way, the material base never lies. And the documentary value of many documentary images, let's say, consists less in their content or in the things they try to convey, but in the fact that, for example, a certain photograph was made with a certain lens, or that it had been printed, on a certain photographic paper. And this is a level of historical information which, of course, can be forged, as we have seen in the eBay work, but which presents a very important additional layer of information which is very often discarded. Just as in many cases, the material base of the images themselves, the aluminum, the bauxite, all these very often recycled materials on which are necessary, which are absolutely necessary to transport the information.
Well, this follows on more hopefully directly, from the last question. As well as looking at the kind of material transformations, when you were talking about abstraction as used on eBay or as generated from the censoring and the copywriting of images on eBay, you can't help but think about value as abstraction in the kind of Marxist sense. And I know that this is something that you're thinking through. When I saw that film, the last film, it struck me that you were looking at the kind of metamorphoses of commodities, and that being tied obviously to the crash sort of emerging, because in the end, the more you can recycle a commodity, the more problematic that is for capital, perhaps. I mean, I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say about that, because it seemed to me everything in the film was showing how good we've become at recycling, extending the life of these materials or forms, the jet that becomes the film. But presumably that's, or implicitly, that seems to be linked to the crisis. And you have this other character of the guy who makes the blue screens, who loses his job after taking out a mortgage on his home. So there's another form of value and another form of matter, perhaps, there. But anyway, that's I guess my question is, are you trying to talk about those kind of transmutations of value in terms of capital's problems, contradictions, the crash, or is that just another kind of line of implication along with all the others? Sorry.
Thank you for the question. I rather take it as a comment, but obviously I think it's basically the crash is a metaphor for a series of recyclings which, in my view, mainly relate to capital itself. Capital sustains itself by repeatedly crashing, by recycling itself, by incorporating crisis and destruction as a productive force. And it's mainly this destruction as a means of production in which I'm interested in this film. But also, I think destruction is a very important tool of creating knowledge and of actually unpacking the force and the social energy that is congealed within commodity. And only in certain cases, by exploding a plane, I mean metaphorically, is one able to think through its social history.
You've just mentioned that that the material base never lies, and what strikes me about your work is that you're going away from this material base to something that tries to portray that you're going away from the authentic picture, trying to show that it is inherently irrelevant whether the authentic image exists or not. So. Are you trying to create and generate something that that goes along with Baudrillard's idea of hyperreality, something that tries to build a life of its own in your artwork?
I've never read Baudrillard properly, I have to admit. But I think, I mean, actually I don't really know what I'm talking about now, but I think the discourse about simulation and hyper-reality tends to quite conveniently ignore the persistence of social reality. So for me it's more about the ways in which fiction and simulation or spectacle, for example Hollywood spectacle, generates social reality instead of misrepresenting it, because, you know, spectacle is always seen as a form of distortion, of misrepresentation, of, you know, incorrect representation of reality. On the contrary, it creates this reality on a quite material level by informing desires, by, you know, generating gestures and postures and role models which will be copied, however incompletely.
I was very interested in what you said about the materiality of the image, but when you were talking about the materiality of the digital, it seemed to me that you're referring to the software, you know, what's required to produce and distribute the image rather than the materiality of the image itself. So I was wondering if you would say something more about the materiality of the digital image.
Well, I think it's, I think the whole topic is underexplored. So
Yeah.
I only see starting points from which to start investigations. I think obviously the level of raw materials is one question. Recently I became interested in actually the mining history of aluminum, you know, and I became aware of the fact that there are lots of social struggles in locations where bauxite is being mined. Huge social conflicts in Vietnam, substantial social conflicts in India, where there is an indigenous tribe which lives close to a mining site and opposes mining on the grounds that it reveres the mountain in which the bauxite is located as a god. I find this completely fascinating. This is another completely different angle, you know, a completely different material aspect, you know, of bauxite, of aluminum, of the material level of images. This is one level. Another level, which I just, you know, even started to become aware of, is that obviously our whole perception is already completely formatted by the tools we use, for example, Google or YouTube. So what sort of conditions of production, or how is it organizing our perception? Of course, I mean, there are lots of different inquiries into that, but there are also lots of aspects which are hardly even known. For example, the fact that there are many different levels of access and privilege at Google itself. I became really interested in the fact that they actually have their own internal color scale, which consists of the colors white, yellow, green and red, which refer to the different ranks you can have within Google. And this will also determine the sort of privileges you have and the sort of access to information within that company. And the lowest rank, which wear a yellow badge, are called the scanops, and they do like the completely reproductive digital labor, and they are not entitled to any access, or they are getting very poorly paid, and so on and so on. So all these things are hardly explored, which is also due to the fact that these companies try to keep it very much from the public eye. If you wanted to look for the information I gave you now, you won't find it on Google. That's very interesting. I think this means we should watch the party now on TV, on Tahrir Square. Well, thank you very much.